sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
Hello, and welcome to My Sister's a Therapist. This is a podcast where a comedian, that's me, Virginia Jones, talks to her sister, who's a therapist. That's her, Laura Ryan, licensed marriage and family therapist.
Hi, I'm Laura Ryan. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, but my main credit is sister to Punchline Pirate, Virginia Jones.
Now, Pirate intimates that I am stealing jokes. I don't want anybody else's jokes, and nobody wants mine.
I think it means you have all the gold.
As listeners know, I've been back in Portland for about 10 months. I was walking to an open mic on Tuesday, and a car drove past me and yelled, "Toxic femininity." Wow, I'm already famous.
They know me.
We have a special guest this week. We're very excited to welcome Brandie Posey to the podcast.
Hello,
Brandie.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. A pirate and a therapist start a podcast.
Brandie is a fantastic comedian, and she is also a fabulous podcaster and has just started a record label for comedy specifically. Brandie, talk to us about that.
I started a comedy label at the end of 2023. It's called Burn This Records. Put out 17 albums last year and mostly working with a delightful bunch of comics who are very funny and also nice people. And you would think that didn't need to be pointed out as a branding move in comedy, but my God.
That's a real small circle, honestly.
Refer to our previous episode with Jackie Cation. Most comics actually statistically are not nice.
No, yeah, most of them are awful. And I think that if we as a culture could just understand that just because someone entertained you does not mean that they are a good person, it would fix a lot of our problems just in general.
Susie Azard talked about this years ago because she said, when someone makes you laugh, you have an extra intimate relationship with them. You feel like you know them. We all have weird parasocial stuff, but she said that specifically it's comedy. When you do comedy, because she's always wanted to do drama, she's always wanted to be an actor, and she started doing comedy just because that was her way into it. When you do comedy, they don't want you to do anything else because they're used to you delivering the drug that is comedy to them.
So I'm just a drug dealer, baby. And I take 20%.
17 albums in your first year. That is incredible.
That really is incredible. That's amazing.
Thanks.
We're very proud of ourselves for doing 52 podcasts in a year.
Guess what? This week, our 80th episode aired.
That's impressive. Most podcasts don't make it past 10 episodes. I think it's like the statistic. You guys are lapping them.
Brandie's being very generous, but how many episodes does Lady to Lady have?
Well, 633 dropped this past Wednesday.
Wonderful.
So that's, yeah.
So we're basically neck and neck is what you're
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? Through the best of times, through the worst of times. Podcasting will be there.
Thick and thin. If you haven't listened to Lady, please do, because it is fantastic. All three ladies are super, and they have a very special relationship with French Stewart.
We do. Every 100 episodes, we do something fun with him. And for our 600th episode, we took him to Las Vegas to go to Magic Mike Live. It was extremely fun. We also took him to an escape room where my two co-hosts and French did mushrooms. I was locked in a cage because it was like a fake jail cell, and they couldn't get me out. And it was actually one of the hardest moments of my life because I was like, the only sober person in the escape room is locked in this place. We were live streaming it. So it was really funny.
Rough.
Oh, man. And then at one point, a teenager came in that worked there and was watching us because you're not supposed to have phones in the escape room because, my God, what if you exposed their secrets? And they came in and admonished us and took our phone.
Oh, wow. I thought they were going to say they saw how pathetic you were and helped you. No, you got yelled at. Thank God the sober person was in the jail cell, because can you imagine?
Oh, yeah.
Let's circle back to Magic Mike.
Absolutely.
Have you ever seen the Thunder from Down Under in Vegas?
Oh, yes. Yes, I have.
Holy smokes. That was something. I'm going to go ahead and just say that. That was definitely something. I usually find men who take their clothes off in public to be ridiculous and weird, but the Australian ones are funny.
Yeah. The Magic Mike show is also interesting, too, because it's about a woman going through a journey of self-discovery throughout the whole show. There is a plot line to the show. There are unicorns. There is pink money. It's very lady forward in a very funny way.
Lady centered, which is the way that I like all things in my life.
Absolutely.
Brandie is coming to us with a specific set of skills, we'll say. Brandie has something called aphantasia.
Yeah.
The inability to create visual images in your head. And we have talked about this a lot before in our episode Inner Monologue, where we talked about synesthetics, aphantasics, hyper imaginative people. But Brandie, tell us a little bit about your experience with aphantasia and when you knew you had it.
It's funny because I learned that I had it during a comedy show that I was about to headline. I was doing a show in central Pennsylvania, and my feature told a joke about having aphantasia, and he explained what it was. His joke was about how when he discovered he had it, it really unnerved him to realize that people have like the term spank bank is not as metaphorical as you would think it is. Having aphantasia, I've learned there's a lot of things that like I've heard, oh yeah, it's a turn of phrase, but like, oh, that's much more literal for people than I ever would have thought. I was sitting in the back listening to this joke going, what is he talking about? And then I Googled it, and then I had to be on stage 2 minutes later. So I was processing in real time in central Pennsylvania in a truck bay.
Truck bay.
Yeah, I'm like in a truck bay.
3 questions. Who books that?
Yeah, it was a real time on microphone processing of the information. And I was just yelling at the audience going, can you see me with your eyes closed?
And of course, the man introducing the topic is doing it through discussion of masturbation. If you haven't heard an open mic man talk about how he likes to masturbate and what he likes to masturbate to, you haven't seen him perform.
Well, you haven't been to an open mic show is what that means.
No. And frankly, I don't recommend it.
No.
I always talk about this one open mic that I attended many years ago. I think it was my first and last. There was a blind albino man. His only joke was about how women called him a rat because he had red eyes and white hair. He was screaming, you effing rat, get away from me. And I thought, you know what? There's nothing funny.
This is not for me.
No.
This is not an experience for me. If you're not familiar with our show yet, every week we have one sister who is the expert on the topic, and then we have the other who is the dummy. This week, I am supposed to be the expert. We're going to figure it out.
It's interesting that you mentioned a comedian with albinism because there are 2 known comics with albinism. Nathan Bird and Victor Varnado. We got one East Coast, one West Coast. So we split it up quite nicely. But it is interesting to talk to someone saying, oh, I saw an albino comic. And you go, which one? And they're both funny in their own ways.
Yeah. This is a third, just albino in the wilds.
A friend of mine actually asked me yesterday in Portland, what are good open mics as an attendee, as an audience member? I'm like, oh, no. People do come to open mics in Portland and I don't understand it. I was just at one on Tuesday and they were telling us, oh, comics can sit around the back of the room. Why do we got to sit in the back of the room? And somebody's like, well, the audience is going to be here. Why is there an audience? But there is.
I know Portland considers itself a city, but when I hear things like that, I refuse to give it anything above town. And I love a town. No. A town is where I found out I have aphantasia.
When I knew you had aphantasia, and it was probably the way comics communicate. You were on stage talking about it, and I was off stage thinking, I was super surprised because I can't imagine being a comedian who is not picturing stuff in their head. And Brandie's actually flipped this on its head, and she has a show called Picture This, where artists draw jokes that comics are telling, almost as if that person is creating her mental images for her. Synaesthetics, who can hear color and smell music, they are frequently musicians.
Yes.
Pharrell, Beyonce, many amazing musicians are synaesthetics.
Monique Moreau has this, I believe.
Does she?
I think she does. Either she tastes color or she hears color.
I was surprised that someone as funny as Brandie can't picture stuff because it's so much a part of my process. It's hard for me to understand yours.
I'm going to read from an article by Shayla Love called I Can't Picture Things in My Mind. I didn't realize that this was unusual. Aphantasia is relatively new to being named. In the late 19th century, scientists, notably Francis Galton, wrote that some people were better able to picture objects in their minds than others. But it wasn't until 2003 that the University of Exeter's Adam Zeman published the first case report on aphantasia after meeting a 65-year-old who had lost the ability to mentally visualize familiar people and places post-surgery. Do you find that it's hard for you to recognize people? Do you have face blindness?
Not that, but what it is when I see somebody, I'll be like, I know this face. It's hard for me to place it in context. My boyfriend and I did a podcast together 12 years ago, and then we did not see each other in comedy for like 8 years. And then
they weren't dating at the time. We should say that.
So then when I ran into him after a comedy show, he has the opposite. He has almost photographic memory. And he's like, no, we did this podcast together 8 years ago. we've met. And I was like, now that you say the podcast and you've given me the context, now I remember. I remember that show. I remember where we did it. I remember talking to you. I kind of needed something to grab onto to pull the memory to me a little bit.
In Brandie's defense, at the time, Rick had a bowl haircut and looked super homeschooled.
They had a glow up sometime during that 8-year break. I get it.
It's called a divorce. Yes.
A divorce and a glow up.
Let me ask you this. I have a lot of people who tell me they cannot picture things. In hypnosis, a lot of what I do is asking people to picture things. People will say, well, I don't know how to do that. And then I will say, when you turn on the water to get your shower going, what direction do you turn it? And what does that look like? And they will usually be able to recall that. Can you recall that?
Yeah, I can. The way that my memories work, it's as if I was reading a police report. I can't see the photos, but these are the things that happened. The words are there, but I'm not seeing them.
It's not like she has no memory.
But a visual memory would be when I'm thinking about getting in the shower, I'm seeing the handle and I'm seeing that I turn it to the right and I'm seeing the other one and all that stuff. I'm seeing a picture.
Yeah, it's almost as if there's like a little notepad that says, hey, shower to the right, pull it out. And it's just these little notes that I have.
Wow, that's really interesting.
When we talked about aphantasia in the inner monologue, one of the stories we told was about one of the tests is picture an apple. A synesthetic person might picture a shiny photographic photoreal apple and see the leaf and the stem. And someone who is less visual might imagine like a black and white drawing or a photograph. But an aphantasic person would say, what do you mean you picture an apple?
Yet again, you have said something right before I was going to say.
That's how sisterhood
We're going to circle back to the article. A quick at-home test for aphantasia, I learned, was called the red star or red apple test. Close your eyes and picture a red apple. How well can you see the apple visually on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the most vivid? Can you see its color, shape, and the length of its stem? Is it a bit hazy, coming in and out of focus? For me, I saw nothing. No fuzzy outline, no hint of an image at all. While working on my story, I thought, well, no one can really see an apple when they close their eyes. It's just a metaphor. And then I asked some friends. Not everyone was a 1, but most people could see between a 1 and 4. There's also a more official questionnaire, if you want to look it up, called the VVIQ, the Vividness of Visual Imagery Questionnaire.
I go apple and I go red delicious, garbage. All right. Honeycrisp, overpriced. I just list the apples in my
Gala.
brain.
Where are we on Gala? That's a good one.
Kind of mealy.
I think a Gala is all right. A Gala is on like the upper tier. I like a Pink Lady personally.
Pink Lady, please.
Sharpness to it.
Pink Lady is the Honeycrisp of today.
Yes.
Honeycrisp, I read an article, they're actually not as good as they used to be. It's not your imagination. The price has gone up. Quality has gone down.
That's good to know. See, this is what happens in my brain. Well, here's all the facts I know about apples. But I don't say them. I just
have a lot of them.
I just run the data in my head. I go, Johnny Appleseed is what happens in my brain.
Isn't there a George Washington reference somewhere?
But I mean, yeah.
That's helpful to comedy, right? Because you're making connections that you might eventually flesh out to something you say on stage. So that's interesting.
I think it's helpful for comedy. I also have realized that I tend to podcast a little bit differently than a lot of people when I do certain shows, because I am always like, oh, that reminds me of a fact. Let me pull that in and then I'll jump off from there. And a lot of people don't think that way.
That's an ADHD move right there.
That's how we do it.
We do that also quite a bit, in fact.
I think a lot of the neurodivergent, there's like a nice soup.
I was actually talking to a client about this very week, because he was saying, well, how do you know if you're going to be able to work with somebody? And I said, well, they have to be neurospicy for me to work with them, because I met with a man maybe a month ago, and he was neurotypical. He had this look of confusion on his face when I was trying to explain something to him, because I jump. I go from here to there and back again. What I've realized is most of my clients are ADHD, autistic, or ADHD. All of my clients are that.
Somewhere in there. If they're not, they can't understand you, and you can't understand them.
A lot of my work is I'm trying to guide you through ideas. And if you can't follow me, it's not going to work that great. Circling back to the Shayla Love article, she says, but can you really see it? I pressed, confused. I know what an apple looks like. I can easily describe many varieties of apples to you right now, even the subtle differences in their coloration. But when I do so, I don't see anything. I retain these details in a different way. Though I had been reporting reporting on the brain for years, it never occurred to me that having no visual imagery was unusual.
This is how I felt.
An article that I'm bringing up called Understanding Aphantasia and Autism. Many people with aphantasia are also unable to recall sounds, smells, or sensations of touch. Do you feel that you have that?
No, I don't have any of those. I can smell something and it will pull a memory. I can't generate the smell from my memory.
My sister and I were recently together IRL, which is very unusual. And I went into a public bathroom that smelled exactly like this Barbie perfume kit that she and I had. And I immediately could see the Barbie kit. I could remember what room that we played with it in. And it was all over body experience. And then I brought Virginia into the bathroom and she too knew what I was talking about.
Wow.
And because it was a little set where there were little bottles and they had scent sticks you would put in the bottle and then grind it around on a little gear, because to be a woman is to learn how to do jobs.
Yes.
Just work.
But also trying to be attractive to men. We have to smell good at 4 years old.
I'm just happy that's what the bathroom smelled like. And that's the memory that it
Could
elicited.
be a lot worse.
I was,
Could be a lot
It
worse.
reminded me of
curious.
this rough night.
I had the opposite. So I did something on that trip that Brandie can't do. There is a ice cream shop that does hamburgers. It's not like Wawa because it's not a convenience store, but it's a small grocery. You can get hamburgers, you can get ice cream, and it's called Braum's, Braums. There was one in our neighborhood in Texas that I have a terrible connection with because every time my father wanted to tell me bad news, we did it over Braum's ice cream. Your mother and I are getting a divorce. Your mother's been cheating on me. Always holding a Braum's ice cream. And now I don't eat ice cream or meat, but I drove past the sign. I could smell the smell of the store and it made me very unhappy.
Oh, yeah. No, I can't do that.
It just goes whoomp. Aphantasia is familial, with research showing that if you have congenital aphantasia, there's a 21% chance your first degree relative, a parent, a sibling, or a child will also have it. Do you think anybody in your family has?
It's interesting. I tried to talk to my dad about this once. And he was just not interested in the topic. He was just like, what? I guess I see stuff. And then he watched Star Trek. It just wasn't interesting to him. He's a whole other podcast.
I have a weird dad who probably has autism.
Yes. Or narcissism. It's one or the other. It's
You will find, at least in our case, there's a lot of overlap between those two things.
But I found out about aphantasia after my mom had passed away. So I don't know. I wasn't able to ask her, but I wouldn't be surprised if she had it. But it's also interesting because she had a neurological disease is what took her out. It's hard to know where that kicked in versus not, versus how that affected memories. I couldn't tell you. Of the two, she might be the one to have it, potentially, yeah.
Interesting.
Also in this article, just for funsies, aphantasia and synaesthesia sometimes cross over, that you might experience a sound with a color or a number with a smell. Another topic that Laura and I have covered on the podcast, and something we talk about every day of our lives, is our belief that almost everyone is on the autism spectrum.
Refer to our episode, Is Everybody Autistic?
This is something that Brandie and I were talking about, and specifically the relationship between aphantasia and autism. And while they're distinct traits, some people with aphantasia who also have autism may exhibit higher levels of autistic traits in areas of imagination and social skills. The tools that a person who has autism but not aphantasia might use to normalize or to try to socially integrate, the aphantasic person doesn't have. So Laura has sent me a list. So key overlaps. Both autism and aphantasia often involve thinking in concrete terms rather than relying on mental imagery. Many individuals with autism describe their thought process as heavily verbal or logical, a cognitive style mirrored in aphantasia. So you've maybe got both. And I do know comics whose autism diagnosis is front-facing in their comedy, and they do tend to be wordplay comics. Your Mike Kaplan.
I remember one time being at a lunch with Mike Kaplan and Zach Sherwin. They had not seen each other in 6 months, and they were catching up. And the way that they caught up is they exchanged riddles for an hour. And I just sat there furious. It's like, I hate riddles so much because I can't visualize the problem. So it's hard to work out.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. In the Shayla Love article, she says, people with aphantasia can still dream and recall memories, but they tend to be non-visual, relying on abstract concepts, emotions, or words. This unique way of experiencing the world has sparked growing interest among neuroscientists, particularly when examining its overlap with autism spectrum disorder.
Other key overlaps. Memory differences, and Brandie brought this up on her own. People with autism and those with aphantasia often rely on factual or conceptual memory rather than visual or episodic. For example, recalling a childhood vacation might evoke a list of events rather than a mental movie. The third one is sensory sensitivities. Autism often involves sensory hypersensitivity, while aphantasia may reflect differences in sensory integration within the brain.
Sensory sensitivity is I'm sensitive to the things in my environment. Difficulty with sensory integration. I think that's where some of the ARFID is something that I help a lot of people with. ARFID is avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. And that is common in the autistic community because of some of these sensory issues. I think when you take certain flavors and textures and mix them together, it's very difficult for a lot of autistic people to deal with.
Almost every child exhibits some level of this, but in a neurotypical person, they would grow out of it. And so when you meet someone who has food issues, it can sometimes feel very childish.
This is going to be the guy who's surviving off of chicken nuggets and pizza. So very simple foods introduced early.
That makes a lot of sense.
In our previous episode, Dream On, we talk a lot about dreams. Brandie, when you have a dream, is it just a script or what's happening?
It's interesting. I very, very rarely remember dreams. It's usually just black all night long. I know my brain is doing whatever, but I told that to one person one time and they're like, God, so it's like you just are dead all night. What a nice sleep.
That person probably had anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. I don't remember most things. The few dreams that I do remember I will completely have forgotten them until I have a deja vu moment. And then I'll be like, oh, I dreamt this. I feel like I'm in a dream right now. I've only ever had one that has not happened yet. So I'm always on the lookout for it. I had a dream that I got into a fist fight at a funeral with my piece of crap cousin. And it was right before my mom passed away. So I was emotionally charged anyway. But at the funeral, I was like, don't do the dream. But then I realized I never saw a body in the dream. Any funeral in my family, I could get into a fist fight in the future. It's a marker I've built for myself a little bit. It's the most vivid dream I've also ever had, too.
I was going to say, that sounds like you're recalling visual images, right?
It's not even visual images. It's just like if you were to read a book and to understand the emotions that the book is trying to convey to you versus seeing it. Yeah. Which is interesting. Also, I love watching science fiction. I hate reading science fiction and fantasy too, because it's difficult for me to visualize everything. But I love to watch it. Or if somebody's like made a TV show or something or a movie and then there are characters, I'm like, oh, great. Now I can go read it because now it's much easier for me.
Oh, I have an input. I see. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this. If a zebra and a hippopotamus made love to each other, what would their baby look like? What's happening in your brain when I say that?
My brain goes zebra, horse, stripes, hippopotamus, mudang.
Okay.
And I go, okay, all right, probably a stripy mudang. And then I go, oh, I saw a mudang video where she was standing in a shadow looking like she was wearing fishnets recently. But if that was stripes, that would be the answer to this.
Because I can see your eyes, I can see that you're actually going to the visual future. You are doing it, but you're just getting there in a really interesting way. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I love brains.
Another thing that aphants have, and I don't know if these articles mention it, but often we have a thing called SDAM, or severely deficient autobiographical memory. I don't know if you've worked with that at all. I think also the way that I relay stories in my life is very just like, here are just the facts, ma'am, of all of this stuff.
I'm thinking of a particular client that I have. We're doing EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And when you do the process of EMDR, you are having to start usually with a visual memory. You have to establish targets ahead of time. And he had the toughest time coming up with any memories. His theory was that he maybe had a lot of abuse and has blocked a lot of things out. But I think it's more he's autistic and the way his brain stores information is really different than what I'm asking of him, basically.
Could see that for sure.
We're going to circle back to this wonderful article from Shayla Love. The way it affects me may have been more understated. In therapy, I struggle with therapeutic techniques that rely heavily on visualization. Cognitive behavioral therapy manuals are full of such techniques, said Ray Shanreader, a cognitive neuroscientist at the University of Liverpool. For example, one exercise asks people to practice responding to different situations by, quote, imagining a scene as if it were a photograph, end quote, followed by imagining the action as if it were a movie.
Not helpful.
Let's say that I was your therapist and I said, imagine that scene as if it were a movie. What would happen when I said that?
It would be me being like, okay, well, it took place in a bank. Which bank was it? Okay, these are the things I know about that bank. Okay, so I've set the scene. All right, the person in the scene, this is the things I know about that person. All right, they were talking to me in this way and it upset me. That's how I would relate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a therapist, when I'm asking questions like that, which I try to avoid because I do know that I'm working with different brains, but when I have done that in the past, it's always been because I'm trying to immerse you in the situation. And for you, that clearly does not work at all because you're not immersed. You're in fact finding and you're somewhere else.
Yeah. A thing that I am thankful for with aphantasia, and I don't think that I would trade it, is because I have a lot of friends that have, what's the intrusive thoughts?
CPTSD.
Yeah, CPTSD. I'm not going to say aphants can't have PTSD. There definitely are. I'm in Facebook groups where people have that, but it's hard to track it in a different way. I don't have intrusive thought in the same way, or like people that are just like, oh, I'm like reliving this horrible thing that happened to me over and over again. And that sounds horrific. And I'm glad I don't have that.
We've got to look for the silver linings. There's gifts and everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can just go no and throw my file out, and I can pretty coldly forget a person pretty quickly if I need to.
If I could do that, I think life would be so much easier.
Yeah.
What Brandie and I were talking about when we were talking about this episode was her link between aphantasia and autism. And it's interesting because my theory was, I bet because these have similar mental traits, I bet that there's a large overlap. And apparently scientifically, there's not. Not every person on the autism spectrum is aphantasic, obviously, and then less obviously, not every person with aphantasia is on the autism spectrum. Where they overlap and interact in an interesting way is that the elements of both overlap in a way that makes it harder to mask autism. The association may be explained by shared difficulties in visual imagery, which can affect thinking, memory, and sensory processing. The way that you approach the world as an aphantasic and as a person with autism can be very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Virginia's going to read from, this is a little bit on the nose, but the title of the article is, what is the relationship between aphantasia, synesthesia, and autism?
If you or someone you know is navigating autism, identifying co-occurring traits like aphantasia can improve the quality of life in several ways. Improve communication. Knowing that someone with aphantasia processes information differently can foster better understanding in relationships and reduce misunderstandings.
Yes.
Educational professional settings can accommodate those differences by emphasizing verbal or kinesthetic learning styles, which I'm assuming, Laura, is movement-based.
You learn from doing, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm super tactile. That makes a lot of sense.
Self-awareness and acceptance, realizing that your mind works differently can be empowering and liberating. I think that's one of the sadnesses of learning that you found out about your aphantasia as an adult, realizing how much the school system and your education, how much you could have been helped and didn't get helped. And you've just had to build other stuff around it.
And also, it's interesting too, because I was a straight A student until algebra. Algebra is visual math, and I could not get it. And my teacher was a jerk. I went from getting straight A's to getting a C in algebra and kind of had a mental breakdown in 6th grade about this. I was also in algebra in 6th grade. I had to take it over again. It was just rote memorization of figuring it out, which I'm also really bad at that. It's like I always have a notebook on stage because I can't do any memory palace stuff. I know that's a thing that's works really well. It always is shocking to me when people are like, oh yeah, just in my room and there's my little list and I can just see all this stuff. You're describing something that I cannot understand at all. I'm a big note taker. I have a physical planner because writing things makes it stick better too. My boyfriend keeps his calendar in his head, which is crazy to me. I checked last night, what am I doing today? And I was like, oh yeah, the podcast. Yes. I've found good systems to be able to export most stuff that people, I think, keep in their brain visually.
You developed systems for a world that was not built for you. Virginia and I are both left-handed, as is everyone in our family except our brother. We're all southpawing the hell out of life. Nothing is built for us. So part of being left-handed means that I always have ink on my hand. Part of being left-handed means that I'm always going to hit myself on the door. Left-handed people are more likely to die in accidents because we have a different system, but it's similar. I'm built in this certain way that the society has not planned for. And it's a bummer.
There's two kinds of aphantasics. There's people who were born to it, and there's people who become aphantasic because of a brain injury or a brain surgery. And we briefly mentioned something like that before. There's two kinds of left-handed people. There's people who were born to be left-handed, who are genetically left-handed. And people, if you have any kind of birth difficulty, if it takes too long to get you out of the birth canal and you lose oxygen for a little bit, the first thing that happens to you is you become left-handed. And I had a super awkward moment with this because another comedian was on stage talking about left-handedness and how he was left-handed. He came back to the green room and someone said, you and Virginia are both left-handed. And then that person also said, but you're also more likely to murder and be in jail and die young. That's because of the two different kinds of left-handed people. And I explained it. And the comedian said, how did you know that? What do you mean? I read it in a book. And he's like, how did you know that I had birth difficulties?
I thought you were going to say murderous thoughts.
Oh, yeah.
How did you know that I got caught in the cord? I'm like, oh no.
Oh, no.
I didn't know that.
I could just tell by the look on your face.
Yeah.
You're the other kind of left-handed, bud.
That's so interesting.
So-
Why is that the first thing that changes?
Because
Weird.
God hates us.
Because this machine is
I
very
love it.
weird.
Yeah.
I'm going to refer to the article. What is the relationship between aphantasia, synesthesia, and autism? When asked to imagine a sunset, most people can create a picture of the scene within their mind's eye, a visual mental image. People of aphantasia lack this ability. They do not make a clear mental picture, even though they can describe what a sunset looks like. Scientists have known for at least 100 years that some individuals do not experience visual imagery, but aphantasia has only recently entered the mainstream research. The present study adds up the body of literature by investigating the relationship between aphantasia and two other neurodevelopmental conditions, synesthesia and autism spectrum conditions. Autism has been linked with poor imagery, raising the question of whether aphantasia and autism might overlap in some way.
The surprising thing for me is also how creative Brandie is and that she is an artist. People with aphantasia usually tend to wind up in science or maths, something that their brain is equipped to do. Here's a list of ways that aphantasia has helped me become a better photographer. Attention to details, making creative compositions, being flexible, living in the moment, and then feeling empathy and connection. I'm not sure how that has to do with aphantasia. I don't know if Laura has an opinion on that. Some of the most famous animators have also had aphantasia. Evidently, the guy who was in charge of the Disney animation studio in the 60s was an aphantasic guy.
I like doing art a lot, but I can't come up with a concept beforehand. But I like doing abstract stuff, like where I'm just like, oh, I'm just playing around in the moment in person. I think I'm a lot more present.
Do you find stuff in it? Can you see stuff in it? If you keep working, will things reveal themselves to you?
Yeah, definitely. Rick is always really surprised. I'm really good at seeing an image in a cloud. I do a lot of that stuff just in the world in general.
What you're saying is that you're a very visual person. You're just not storing stuff in that way. It is kind of making my brain explode a little bit right now.
No, it's interesting. And I think, Virginia, what you were saying about the empathy thing, a thing that I've kind of realized and put more thought into it as I've learned about aphantasia too, is that I think I'm very good at relating to people because of those lists. Because if I relate to somebody, I'm not pulling a moment from my life visually that I'm relating to them to. Here are the facts I know about that thing. So I'm depersonalizing a potential experience that I have with somebody as I am talking to them. This is what I remember about it. I'm not painting a full picture and inserting that into a conversation with somebody as I'm relating.
You're not as prone to reflect to someone their experience with a story about your experience. Here's the facts. Here's the things that I know. And you can be with them in the moment.
That is a benefit because I'm terrible at that. Everything's about how does it relate to my thoughts. I learned this recently. I don't know where I read this, but someone was saying, you think that when you share similar stories, you're connecting with the person, you're relating to them. But a lot of times people experience that as you were talking over them and you're trying to replace their stories with your own.
One-upmanship.
Exactly. And I think the way that that plays out for me is usually I'm not relaying the same story. I go, oh, that reminds me of this happened, but this is how I felt. Did you feel this way too? I kind of very quickly get past the actual event that I'm trying to relay to them.
Okay, this is about what a special peanut you are.
Aw.
Aphantasia is most often a congenital condition in which individuals experience a lack of visual imagery or imagery that is only vague or dim. Previous prevalence estimates for aphantasia ranged from 0.7% to 2.1% and 6.7% for individuals with no mental imagery at all, but as high as 15% for imagery that is either absent or dim or vague. Since visual imagery has been linked to a number of aspects important in everyday life, autobiographical memory recall, short-term memory recall, task-oriented motivation, it may seem surprising that many aphantasics live their lives without knowing that they are different, as Brandie did until that man was talking about his spank bank.
Yes, exactly.
The last thing from Shayla Love's article. 2 years ago, I wrote an article about pupillometry, which is the study of the size of pupils, the measurement of a person's pupils to infer their Joel Pearson, a psychologist and neuroscientist at the University of South Wales, was trying to use pupils as a biomarker to assess aphantasia, a condition thought to affect about 3.9% of people. So, Brandie, what's going on with your pupils?
Girl, good question. I've read a little bit about this too, where I think it's as certain people are recalling memories as if they're in the moment a little bit.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
And so as an aphantasic, because you're accessing a totally different part of the brain, but you are sort of doing visual too. It's all very confusing and interesting to me. So I'm glad you came on our show.
But it's like when people are experiencing love, sometimes their pupils will dilate because maybe they're visualizing that person or that relationship, and Brandie's might not. But it doesn't mean she doesn't love people. She's full of love. What I've come out of this episode with is that aphantasia and autism are not linked, but they taste so much like each other that it can feel like they are the one leads to the other, or
overlapping. I think that's basically what I'm learning. We call it a spectrum disorder because there's a whole spectrum of people who are more on the autism end, maybe more on the ADHD end. But really what it comes down to is pruning. Our brain doesn't naturally prune in the same way that other people's brains prune. So that's why we have all these weird connections between different things. If you're talking about ice cream, I'm going to start going through all my ice cream memories because they haven't been synaptically pruned the way that they were supposed to. Because it sounds like what you're doing is you just have this flood of all of these details. So I think it's about a lack of synaptic pruning also. So
will you talk a little bit more about synaptic pruning? Because I don't know what you're talking about.
Synaptic pruning is the process where the brain eliminates unnecessary or redundant synaptic connections between neurons to refine and optimize neural circuits. It involves the selective removal of synapses that are not efficient for essential brain function, allowing the brain to focus on strengthening and maintaining the more important connections. My brain doesn't do that. It just keeps everything. My brain is a hoarder of synapses.
Did you ever watch Donald in Math Magic Land when you were a kid?
Yes.
There is a moment in that where Pythagoras has Donald go into his brain to look for a memory, and it is just a filthy little office full of cobwebs and nothing is organized. And he brings in a broom and he just like cleans up the space and puts things in filing cabinets where they're supposed to be.
That's legit.
And it is a very calming thought that I have often. And I have that JPEG of it that I will pull up sometimes just to be like, we got to get to Donald brain.
We got to get this cleaned up.
Yeah, exactly.
Our brains are like a jumble sale, and it's full of chaos and mess, but also sometimes wonderful things.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I like the files because you never know what's really going on in there.
Brandie, what are your final thoughts? I don't know if you've learned anything from us. We've learned a lot from you. But what are your final thoughts on this topic?
Well, it's interesting because I never really thought about the overlap with autism, but I have a lot of autistic and ADHD friends as a creative just in general. And it's interesting because I have had moments where I've been like, am I autistic? But when I learned about aphantasia, I was like, oh, no, actually, I don't think I am. Or potentially I'm on very small end of that scale. This explains quite a bit more of the stuff that is overlapping.
Your aphantasia can look like autism.
Yeah. Thank you for exploring like the link a little bit more formally than I had ever really thought about.
No. Well, you're welcome.
Laura, what are your final thoughts on this topic?
My final thoughts are, I really want to learn a lot more about it because I find it super interesting. It is kind of making my brain implode a little bit because the way you're talking about the world is so different from the way that I'm talking about the world. And it reminds me when I'm working with couples, when we start the appointment, I say, okay, so you have your version of reality and she has her version of reality. What we're going to do is we're going to go and explore your different realities and we're just going to learn about them without expecting them to overlap. So I feel like when you are talking about your version of reality, it is so different from my version of reality that it is causing my brain to crumble from the inside, which is probably a good thing.
Wow. Well, I look forward to doing couples therapy with you.
Let's do this.
Let's get into it.
So, Virginia, what are your final thoughts on this very interesting topic that Brandie has brought to us?
My final thoughts are every neurodivergent person has to figure out methods to make their life work. I think it's interesting that Brandie has her own methods. I have built my life around the systems and the organization and the stuff that I need to make any sense of anything at all. Every single one of us has our own gifts and crosses to bear and bears to cross. We all figure out our own path, either assisted or unassisted, to help us get through a neurotypical world. And how many neurotypical people are there really? It feels like we're probably in the majority, and then the world should reflect us.
Yeah, I think there's probably about 10 neurotypical people because that's the only amount I've ever met.
They're not on TikTok.
Absolutely.
No way. They're watching The Bachelor, I think.
I
Right.
think they are. Brandie, if somebody wanted to follow your comedy career, your Lady to Lady podcast, how would they go about doing that?
I am at Brandazzle on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky. Am I posting on all three? No, but follow me, and whichever one wins, I'll invest in more. Brandazzle is here on TikTok because somebody has Brandazzle and won't give it to me. Lady to Lady is a podcast that comes out every Wednesday for the last 13 years and the next 13 years forever until the internet ceases to exist. Picture This is my animated comedy show we're talking about. We do that in LA and New York every month and a half in either city. We also take that on the road a little bit here and there. Burn This Records is my comedy label. I'll be having a special, an album come out on it later this year. But follow me at Brandazzle. You'll see all that different stuff. If you use bands in town, you can follow me on there for when I'm coming to your town. I like to tour quite a bit. Would love to meet you on the road. Come up and introduce yourself and be like, hey, you're the one that you won't remember my face, but I'll remember our interaction. Come find me.
Speaking of comedy, Virginia, if anyone wants to find out about your comedy career, how would they go about doing that?
First of all, I want to remark to Laura, you can tell the proof's in the pudding, and the pudding is full of alcohol, but Brandie is a dynamo and an incredible creative, but an incredible organizer and hard worker. And I've always been very impressed by her and the things she does.
Got a book called Organize right on my desk right here, right now.
Nice. Organize, fight, win. If you're interested in me, Virginia Jones, you can find me at my website, www.budinia.com. It's also my handle on Insta and on TikTok. Laura had a little taste of fame when we were together in Denton, Texas, because many people approached her who've been listening to the podcast and know things about her. Hi, Tim. Wink.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Say no more.
If you would like to suggest a topic to us, you can write us at hello@mysistersatherapist. If you would like to hire us for anything, you can write us at hireus@mysistersatherapist.com, and we will do, within legal requirements
and reason,
almost anything for money.
We'll be at your miniature donkey contest.
I'll also be there. You don't have to pay me. I'll just come to that.
And what's the result of the contest? All miniature donkeys are winners. We will host your 3-year-old's birthday party. We will also do a very informative women's weekend about how to overcome mental challenges and
the patriarchy
and get out and kick butt. Laura, where can people find you on the internet if they're so inclined?
Well, if they're interested in following my professional career and booking an appointment with me, and they live in Texas, they can find me at lauraryan.org. They can also find me on TikTok. I am Laura Ryan. They can also find me on Xiaoheng Shu. I am Laura Ryan. Some people call it Red Note. They can follow our podcast on My Sister's a Therapist Instagram page, or they can just go to our website, mysistersatherapist.com.
Laura, now is the time of the podcast where you sometimes read a review or a comment that someone has left us. And we should say, 1, how much we appreciate it. And 2, if you like the podcast, tell 3 people right now today.
Tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell strangers on the bus, tell people in the men's room.
Do you have a review to share this week?
I do. I'm going to call this person Smithix. My weekly dose of therapy and humor. My Sister's a Therapist has quickly become my favorite podcast. Every Thursday, I eagerly anticipate the release of the latest episode and fill much of my remaining drive time revisiting older episodes. The blend of humor and valuable therapy insights is marvelous. It's informative, relatable, and laugh out loud funny. And it takes a lot for me to laugh out loud at a podcast. I feel like I've developed parasocial relationships with the sisters because of how genuine and down to earth they are. Their connection is so natural that you can't help but feel like you are part of the conversation. And sometimes the family. You wouldn't want that.
No.
Even my 11-year-old daughter enjoys listening to content appropriate for her age, of course. If you're looking for a podcast that's both educational and entertaining, My Sister's a Therapist is a must listen.
That's incredible. Thank you, Smithix.
Thank you, Smithix.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
If you would like to leave us including Brandie. If you want to leave us an incredible review of our podcast, feel free to go to Apple Podcasts, which is where we found this one, or you could go to Amazon Podcasts.
I want to thank our guest, Brandie, for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Please follow Brandie everywhere. She's incredible. An even more incredible person.
I wouldn't say even more, possibly equally incredible.
I want to leave us on the immortal words of Billy Ray Valentine Capricorn when he said, "We can make it, baby."
Me and you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.